Good evening and welcome to episode 63 of the Jacksonian. I'm yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I have with me is the editor and lead writer of Aggies Wire himself, Cameron Ohnysty, as we'll be going over our take on the latest on Texas A&M basketball and football with Buzz Williams and Mike Elko and so much more. And let me tell you something, folks, it's going to be a wild ride. How you doing today, good buddy?
Doing well, it's been a busy season. Obviously, we have spring football coming up pretty soon, but focused on basketball and baseball right now. Again, the crux of the season, obviously, with the NCAA tournament coming pretty soon and SEC tournament coming, I think starting next week. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot, but a lot of storylines, lot going on. So.
There we go. I mean, spring practice is near, March is here. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
But for those who want to learn a little more about you, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
So, I grew up surrounded by Texas A&M my entire life. Lived in Dallas, Texas, the Frisco area for a long time. Lived there for about 5 years. Actually moved to Iowa, where I still live. So I cover Texas A&M from afar and go cover games when I can. But yeah, getting back into sports writing, getting into something I felt like that's where my skill set was, especially writing anything, but focusing on sports, focusing on a team I knew and loved my entire life, but could do it in an unbiased manner. That was the right choice. And I'm glad I've been doing it for a long time, but we've been building the site up. We've been, through various writers here and there. I've stayed steady, but still love to cover this team, every team that Texas A&M has on a daily basis. And, we're in interesting times right now with, Mike Elko with college, with the football team right now. Buzz Williams is in his sixth season, about to take his team to a third consecutive NCAA tournament. Obviously, Michael Early with the baseball team after the Jim Schlossnagle debacle last summer. So there's a lot going on.
That was nuts.
Everybody, yeah. I've never been asked more in my life about that 2-month period, and I don't want to relive it, but it was interesting to say the least.
Well, you won't on this particular episode of the Jacksonian, that's for sure.
Yeah, true.
But like Mike Elko, you brought up about him coming on into College Station. 2024 didn't have a good ending, like losing those last several games. But the 2024 season, how'd you feel about it?
So it was so hot and cold. I mean, when you start 7-1 and you're undefeated in SEC play, you have wins over Missouri. You have, very close victories against Arkansas, Bowling Green. It was when Marcel Reed came in as a quarterback. Obviously, I think a lot of people now know that Connor Wegman, who started the season, struggled, had a shoulder injury, was replaced by Marcel. I believe it was against Florida was when he came in and had a very efficient game. That was a game where basically A&M dominated on the ground and really established themselves as a run first offense with Le'Veon Moss, their senior running back, then a junior running back that year. So that's really what I'm going to go, is that you can kind of look at the schedule there. Everything kind of dropped off after the LSU game. And so when Connor Wegman he came back as the starter against Missouri. Marcel had struggled against Arkansas, did lead them to a win at the end, but Mike Elko was still obviously discussing who's the guy I want to go to have the most success at the end of the year. Wegman had a great practice coming back from injury. He came in, had a very good game very efficient game against Missouri. Obviously, they got the blowout win there. Went on the road against Mississippi State. He struggled, but A&M still got out with a convincing win, mainly because of the defense. Then we go to LSU, where obviously a night game in Kyle Field, biggest game of the year at that point. A&M is still obviously undefeated in SEC play. Their only loss in the season is to Notre Dame, who eventually went to the national championship game, so that's not a bad loss. But Wegman looked horrible, and he looked confused. The defense was reading him on every play. Marcel ended up coming in the second half, having that memorable running game, basically shredding LSU's defense to the point of, I think they outscored them by 23 points in the second half consecutively. And we all kind of thought, okay, this is the identity. of A&M. It's going to be run the ball with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels, run with Marcel Reed when it opens up, efficient passing game. We can do this. South Carolina on the road the next week. This is South Carolina, as I think every SEC fan knows and football fan knows who watched most of the games in 2024. South Carolina was a rising team that had some very close losses that they shouldn't have had. It was mainly, just bad play calls and getting behind late. And going into that game, A&M was a slight favorite. I did not feel good about it because the way South Carolina plays physically. We saw that, Marcel looked okay. They actually tied the game up. I believe it was 20-all in the first half. But Le'Veon Moss, A&M's star running back, got injured, which would end up being a season-ending lower body injury. And that completely changed the trajectory of the season. The identity of A&M's offense was gone. Teams were able to, and let me preface that, before the season started, A&M's former five-star sophomore running back Reuben Owens was injured before the season started. He had a knee injury that kept him out until the Texas game in the season finale, and he only played a handful of snaps. But really, Le'Veon Moss's injury just destroyed this offense. And it was never the same because, as you see, there was a 1-4 finish. And that was mainly due to defenses figuring out what Marcel was going to do. He was not developed as a passer yet. A&M's wide receiver rotation was just not very big. There weren't a lot of man beaters on that team. Let me just say that, with Evan Stewart when he left last year to go to Oregon. And, the worst game, as you can still see, was at Auburn, where A&M lost in one of the craziest, I think it was 4 overtimes.
Yeah.
And that basically put everything into perspective throughout the year, that this team had a chance to really pull off what would be A&M's best season since 2012. And even though they still had a chance to go to the SEC championship game, technically, because of some previous losses, if they beat Texas, we all thought, how's this team going to beat Texas? And as you see, a 17-7 loss that A&M's offense couldn't score a point. The loss to USC in the bowl game, that was another, great offensive showing by Marcel Reed, but the defense gave up some shots downfield at the end. They ended up losing 35-31. Really, it was just one of the most disappointing seasons I've covered outside, and that's saying a lot because I've been covering A&M since the 2022 season professionally. So, and we all know, like, they've had some really bad years, and so, but we know what they want to do with Colin Klein as the offensive coordinator. Obviously, Mike Elko's defense, which he's really taking over the play calling more next year. They went out and got Lyle Humpill from I'm blanking here, James Madison, who worked with Elko in the past, to join the defensive staff. So Jade Bateman's not going to have as much responsibility with play calls. So they're doing everything they need to do to shore up this coaching staff. Obviously, going to the transfer portal and getting 14 players, several defenders. Obviously, Casey Concepcion at wide receiver is going to help a lot with that receiving core. But we know what the future is. It's just every time, I think it really hurt the fan base a lot, because when you are undefeated and you're Texas A&M, again, this is Texas A&M, who has not had consistent winning seasons and has not had a 9-win season since 2020. They just want consistency. And when you have a 1-4 finish, it's pretty detrimental. And you don't get very excited going into the offseason like you would if you were a Texas, who just went to the playoffs for the consecutive season, and you have Arch Manning, you have all these star players and stuff like that. But even though A&M's roster going into the 2025 season is very good and very good enough, barring any more additions in the spring transfer portal, I just don't see a lot of excitement right now. Hopefully that comes, with the spring game. And so.
Well, I mean, something that can bring some excitement throughout 2025 is seeing if A&M can beat LSU on the road, because it's like ever since A&M joined the SEC, they can beat LSU in College Station, but not in Baton Rouge. And it's a perfect time to, because like Brian Kelly, let's be honest, he's overrated at LSU.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think they've beaten them in Baton Rouge since 90. I'd have to look back, 94 maybe, when I was born. I
Oh
think it's
man, the
either
year
that
to
or
go to the
a couple years
movies.
after. It's nuts, and obviously they didn't play them as much back then when they were in the Big 12, but it, I mean, you gotta cross that barrier sometime, and you've got to do that to prove that you are a contender for the playoffs. If you don't get one of those type of wins during a season, and you look at 24, and a lot of fans will say, well, you beat Missouri at home, who was a top ranked team, great offense. It's not the same. Again, you beat an LSU team, which I don't think was very good. I think they were above average in Kyle Field, like you said. It's not the same. It felt good at the time because you're making strides, but like you said, you got to pull one of those out, and you've got to do it with when we all know, talking season when it comes, and when SEC media days come, and all these players are hyping up their teams, and you start to look down the rosters across the SEC, and you go, okay, he's got this, they've got this. Jalen Milroe's gone, so we don't know what Alabama's going to look like offensively, right? So we don't know that. We do know what LSU's going to look like, with Garrett Nussmeier coming back, but with A&M's defense, besides their defensive line, which needs some depth, should be good enough, right? But it's the offense that's going to be under the radar again. It's going to be, is Marcel Reed going to be a proven passer in this league, or is he going to be a guy who he can make a couple pretty throws here and there, but most of the time he's going to scramble around and have to make plays out of structure. But is he going to be that guy that they can rely on when they've shut the run down and you need to make passes? You need to make those crucial throws to take the lead late in those games on the road. So that's going to be very interesting, because if you look at their schedule, it's one of the toughest in the SEC, but you are facing teams that do have some questions, going into next season. There's not a lot of solidified defenses, and especially I think, when they go on the road to face Notre Dame in a rematch, that team's going to look completely different. And they just competed for a championship, but we don't know what they're going to look like, especially offensively.
No. But
Yeah.
and I noticed like one schedule note is that we're going to be back to seeing Texas A&M, Arkansas be a home and road game. So
Which I'm happy about. Yeah.
I've gotten used to it being at the Jerry Dome, because it's like I'm old enough to remember when it was like a non-con game where
Yeah. I mean,
it,
no, it's always been fun. And that's the thing. I always look forward to that game, because if you just like football, like I hate covering it. It's horrible to cover because you're literally in the fourth quarter and one team could have a 10-point lead, and then all of a sudden it disappears and you're just going, what the hell happened? But at the same time, I do like that finally we're getting that tradition back of playing it at each stadium, because both fan bases are great. Arkansas has not been, I feel bad for the Arkansas fans because it's just they haven't had a lot to cheer for lately. It's kind of like, when they win 8 games is a huge achievement, and that shouldn't be the case because they do have a great fan base. But, we'll see what they look like. They could be a surprise team next year. They're bringing back their stud quarterback. They've got always have a good offensive line, and that's where I think that game's going to be very, very, very fun to watch, is in the trenches. Both A&M's bringing back their entire offensive line next season. That's going to be the main focus, especially with the run game. And you could ask any of A&M's running backs; they're more excited than anybody else, because they know I'm actually going to have probably the best offensive line to run behind, and we've actually got some depth, so I don't have to, go in there and hope that I don't, get a sprain or something, because I'm going to be taking 25 touches a game. But and just the way they play, I think they're going to play very similar football next year based on the schemes. Obviously, Bobby Petrino is a little different. I do remember what it's sad to think what he could have done with A&M if Jimbo Fisher had removed the purse strings. But we're finally seeing that at Arkansas, so that he's still an offensive genius. But it's going to be fun. I'm glad that was the one thing when they did make that change. I was very happy about that.
there we go.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's fun seeing him at like Fayetteville, where it's like back there. Like, is he gonna come back as a head coach again, or does
Yeah.
he have unfinished business? Like, what kind of
Yeah.
day?
I don't know. Because it's like we thought that too. I thought it was just, a situation, because automatic when he left, I was not surprised, because when obviously Fisher was fired and he wasn't, and Elko wanted his, his own staff. As I was really wondering, is he going to take like the small school route, go and dominate when nobody's watching like he did with Missouri State? Or is he going to do, obviously go to an SEC program, get back to his roots as an OC and turn, random quarterbacks with some skill set into stars, which he's known to do. And I don't know. I could see him taking an opening in the future. I just don't know right now where it would be, but I could see it obviously staying in the SEC. I think he's got maybe 2 more years being an OC under his belt, but I'll be honest, he makes the SEC fun to watch when you're not covering a team. So, but he could be back in the saddle sooner than later.
Oh man, it's just it's just like, it's like you said, it's fun. It's fun when he's not on your team.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's just, and you got to have a coach, and it's like the NFL when you get an OC in there, like, and you have a play calling head. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, so I had to go through the Mike McCarthy, play calling era of, the OC basically. The OC's now the head coach, which is interesting enough. But, head coaches that call plays and have dominance over that, you waste, great offensive minds. So it was good to see where he went to a team where the head coach is an O-line coach. So, and he doesn't have any touches on, any say on what they're going to run. But no, we need more coaches like that. I think obviously Hugh Freeze, hopefully he gets through the cancer diagnosis he's dealing with right now. But that's another name that I was glad that when he came in the conference, to kind of spice things up, so we could see some high scoring offenses in the future that weren't, just LSU right now and Missouri. And so.
Well, we're on to the basketball team. And as of this episode, like the A&M Auburn game hasn't been played because, of course, of it being pre-recorded.
Mm-hmm.
The A&M Aggies have been on a 4-game losing streak. Like it looks like this season has been kind of a mixed bag because like they started off with a loss to Central Florida, but they've got some good wins here and there. What's going on with the Aggies?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to talk Aggie basketball with any kind of national person too. And I think people pay attention, and I think they obviously pay attention when you get an SEC play, but it's, answering questions a lot of the time has to surround with, what's wrong with them? Why can't they score the ball? This has been the case with Buzz Williams, with this team specifically. They're graduating 8 seniors. Obviously it's going to be a big senior night tonight before they face Auburn. And, their identity is always going to run through Wade Taylor. And if Wade Taylor is not playing efficient basketball, you're not going to win that game. And so one of the bright spots, though, of the season has been Farrell Payne. He was a transfer from Minnesota. He's been their consistent scorer over this losing streak. He has been the perennial bright spot, even when you're losing games, of this guy's going to be a star with this team. I think he has 1 year left. He's coming back next year. But this is a team that's centered around their seniors, and it's centered around Taylor and Henry Coleman and Anderson Garcia, who have played okay. Coleman I think he's had single-digit scoring efforts the last 3 or 4 games within the losing streak. But their identity runs through, Taylor making clutch shots when needed, making at least 3 3-pointers a game, efficient shots inside. He's had an issue of, he's 6 foot, right? So when you're going against a 6'10", 6'11" forward, that's no go. That's not going to happen. And he's done that sometimes in games when they're trailing by, 4 or 5 points. You got to have it buckets, and he's just rushing in the paint when he could easily dump it off, trying to take control of the game. And those are automatic blocks and just poor possessions. And that's been the case outside of Florida when they got blown out 89-70. They were still down by 6 after trailing by double digits most of the game. And that was mainly because, the defense couldn't hold up enough. And the 3-point defense has been horrific. No matter what Buzz Williams says, they've allowed, I think the number is 42% from beyond the arc within this losing streak. 3 players have had career nights shooting the 3 for every team, and when you watch that, you think it's parody. You think this is funny, right? that's just been that's how his defense is. It's we're gonna stuff up the middle. You're not going to get anything going to the paint, but we're going to allow at least one shooter to get open, and he's usually going to drain those. And so it is funny to look at their schedule and you see win. They only had, I think, two consecutive losses and throughout the season before this losing streak started. But and I've been asked that a couple times. The past 2 weeks, what's going on? Their identity is non-existent right now. They got to get back to playing the aggressive D, and much better defense on the perimeter to actually have a chance against these type of teams, because it's only going to get tougher. And Auburn is one of those world beater type rosters right now where I believe I'm scared on the name. I believe their point guard had 9 3-pointers against Kentucky the other night. So it's not going to get any easier. And this is a big game for you momentum wise, because you're in the NCAA tournament. You're probably right now, I think Joe Lunardi has them as a 4 seed. They could potentially drop to a 5 to 6 seed at this point. They're guaranteed, but at the same time, even though you're guaranteed to make the tournament, you got to win some games in between. You don't want to go in on a losing streak, because you're going to face a team like Townsend or somebody who, relies on three-point shooting and hitting their free throws. And you could end up losing a game like that because you're not doing the basics. And so it's hard to say if they're, a bad team right now. And I have not done that, because I still believe that they can pick it up. I've seen it before. I've been covering this specific roster for 3 seasons, so I know them in and out. But at the same time, you got to prove it, and you got to prove it on the biggest stage, which starts tonight against the number 1 team that's coming in your house on senior night, amongst which should be close to a sold out Reed Arena. And you got to prove everybody wrong. So
that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And, Buzz Williams has done a pretty good job in College Station. I mean, he's a proven winner from Marquette and Virginia Tech. I mean, it's like the fact they even got Virginia Tech basketball win.
Exactly. That's the thing. I had a buddy who actually was on the staff that I went to college with. He was going to go into coaching. He just went into business. And he had said, like, this is one of the greatest inspirational leaders you will ever work around in anything you do. And so he gets a lot of for that, and he deserves it, because he has kept a roster together that in today's college football transfer era, that does not happen. And I remember when I wrote an article about it, that they were, it was 8 seniors are being honored. Even fans of this team were going, 8? Like 8 players are leaving? Wow. And it's like, no, but that's a symptom of, him keeping them together. These guys want to stay. They want to develop. They want to earn their degree. They want to be around this guy. And that was the case when you look at the players that he coached at Marquette and Virginia Tech. They stayed mostly 4 years outside of a couple handfuls. So, I believe that they can get it going. But again, Wade, and I forgot to say that, Wade Taylor is 25 points away from breaking Texas A&M's all-time scoring record. So you got all that in front of you. You got a lot of good things you can accomplish in front of you. It's just they're in a tailspin right now, and they got to find something mentally through their head coach and through themselves to get out of this rut and get in the SEC tournament with at least, maybe a couple wins. You play LSU on the road to end the regular season. So we'll see. We'll see tonight. We'll see what team shows up tonight.
There we go, man. And Wade Taylor and Buzz Williams to the rescue.
Yeah, well, hopefully, we'll say.
Like Buzz should say that. Like that would be cool. Just like have that be his catchphrase. Goes Buzz Williams to the rescue.
He trusts that kid more than any coach trusts a player, and he will tell you, like, he's taking shots where you're watching going, what was that? And he'll say after press, like, well, do you just kind of allow him to have free reign? And he's like, well, yeah, he's earned that trust. Like, and I get that, because when you're 25 points away from breaking the all-time scorer among guys like AC Law and all these great players that have been at A&M during even the dark years, as we call them, with A&M basketball in the 90s and early 2000s, he's a guy that nobody thought he would do this. This was a 4-star player, obviously a 6-foot combo guard when he was recruited, who we just kind of thought he was going to be a good player. But he has to live up to that greatness. You know what I mean? That's the thing, and it's not harsh to say you need to get ahead of it. You need to be the one that does this and that helps his team out. I get it's a team effort, but you need to be. This is your last year with Texas A&M. You're out of here after this year. So it's your last tournament run. It's your last shot at making a Sweet 16. So there's a lot on the line right now.
Well, I mean, at least he'll get to be the right-hand man to Buzz Williams because
Yes.
I've heard he trusts him so much that he thinks he should be the Nets head coach.
Yeah, I swear. If I don't see him on a Buzz Williams coaching staff in the next like 5 years, I'd be shocked. I honestly would. Because I don't know what his NBA career looks like. He's a shorter guy, so we'll see how that works. But and I'll be honest, I've heard I don't know how many interviews in my life from players from the high school to college to NFL. That is a professional young man. That is somebody who, if you're a company or somebody wants to hire an intern right now or just full blown hire him for anything, that's the type of guy. So, but I do believe he'll go into coaching if his playing career doesn't pan out. So,
well, it'll be fun seeing what A&M basketball can bring and what A&M football can bring. I mean, A&M football is going to be a lot better than where they were under Jimbo. Because
I do believe that. Yeah, that's the thing I try to say is that like it sucks right now. And if you're an Aggie fan alum and you're kind of like, oh, they have a spring game, that's great. Well, Texas isn't doing their spring game, so there's a reason Texas isn't doing their spring game. Texas isn't doing their spring game because. And Steve Sarkisian, I think he said on the NFL Network the other day, it's like, we're all beat up and, we don't want to put extra tread on these guys, and which is kind of confusing because half of their team left for the NFL, but I don't know. But
I'll be watching. I'll be watching for April 19th for the A&M spring game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be good that you're going to have a relatively new roster coupled with a veteran roster. That you're going to have a couple skill players, like I said, Casey Concepcion, obviously Ruben Owens returning, a couple freshman backs, a couple freshman receivers. I think Jerome Miles, their 5-star, he's not going to be there, but there's a lot of talent on this team. There's too much talent not to improve next season, and that's as basic as I can say it.
There you go.
So.
And there's not going to be players smoking a little joint before the game starts.
No, that's not. I mean, I'm not going to call. I'm not gonna.
I bet Elko's going to make them run laps. Like,
yeah,
he's going to be like, go run laps, go run laps.
Well, yeah, it's a way tighter ship there. I'll say that. And I think he's recruiting players specifically. Like, I've studied these recruiting classes every time I come in, and you look at where these guys are from and who they are. And not saying that guys like at Jimbo Fisher's recruiting classes were, troublemakers or anything. There's a handful.
Nah.
But at the same time, you've got very football-minded young men who just want to come in, get their degree early, play as much football as they can, get to the NFL. And I think that's what he wants to institute there. He wants to make it, and I hate to say that because Texas is above A&M in a couple schools right now, kind of emulate what they're doing, emulate what Alabama has done in the past. You want to be that professional university, and they're taking steps towards it. It's just I think the fan base just needs to get to 9 wins or above, make the college football playoff, and I think they'll feel better after that. It's just the 8-win season, 7 wins. It just doesn't hack it with them, and they're getting tired. So hopefully, we'll be covering it the entire offseason and every aspect of it, but hopefully we see a little improvement even in the spring game.
Well, there should be plenty of improvement in the second season of Mike Elko. That I can personally guarantee. Yeah. I mean, if he can win at Duke, Bro can win at Texas A&M. That
I agree, and I think a lot of people don't realize how hard it is to get players at Duke. So you have to, and that's why like any transfer portal success he's had over the last 2 seasons is not surprising. It's really not, because it's communicating with these guys, is telling them how I'm going to use you, and that's what he did. I mean, it's Duke. It's CEO University, as I call it. It's a pure, outside of basketball, obviously, but that's a machine. The football program always needs a very good recruiter as head coach to actually get anything done, and he's proven that tenfold. So,
Well, before we wrap up this show, episode 63 of the Jacksonian, for those who want to learn more about Texas A&M or learn a little more about you, where can the people find you?
So aggieswire.usatoday.com. So we have our articles appear on the USA Today site. I don't do a lot of tweeting these days. I usually tweet during the season, but I'm not one of those people who's constantly tweeting you updates and stuff like that. I'm very busy covering. But no, our articles are pretty much everywhere. We do constant updates compared to other people. We do constant injury updates, constant changes to what's going on. So we're not just doing, deep opinion pieces or anything like that. We do that kind of stuff, but that's the best way I can sell us. I mean, we're constant. You need an update of what's going on with football, basketball, baseball, softball, track and field, every sport you can think of at Texas A&M. We're giving you an update on that.
There you go. Check them out on Aggies Wire on USA Today, Gannett Media, and Aggies Wire on X and on Facebook. And you can give him a follow on Cameron Ohnysty on X, Instagram, Facebook, and so much more. And let me tell you something. He is a go-to on Texas A&M athletics.
Appreciate that, man.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, I know he's my go-to. And as with me, you can check me out on Jackson Johnson 979, where I have numerous episodes of the Jacksonian and numerous shows of the Buzzer Beater with Will and D every Wednesday or Thursday afternoon, where we go over the latest news and notes in all of college basketball. And I do some collaborations here and there with Sports Talk with Austin and so much more. And you can also check me out on Alabama at the Voice College Football, where Monday nights, Monday afternoons, Coach Johnny Burtz and I give out our takes on the latest news and notes on the Alabama Crimson Tide, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, Jeffrey at Only Talk Sports and I take your calls on the Alabama Crimson Tide Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central Time. And for more updates on what's going on the Jacksonian and on Alabama with the Voice College Football, check out and see what I have to say on Jackson VOCFB on X/Twitter and on Instagram and Threads at Jackson Johnson 543908. And with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss another video or episode, and we will see you soon. Have a good night, everybody.